How much do inbound shipments to Amazon FBA cost?
So the question of how much inbound shipments cost is an important one, and probably something that a lot of newbies are wondering about. I know when I first started and found out that I had to pay for the shipments to send my items into Amazon, I immediately was wondering how much it cost, how much it would cost me over time. And in the beginning, it was tough because I wasn't making any sales. I made my first sale, so I sent my first shipment in September of 2014. My first sale was in October, and I believe I only had 1 or 2 in October, and then December I had like 8 or something. Wasn't exactly having huge sales, which is why another conversation, I recommend having a little bit of money to be able to pay for sourcing and inbound shipping before you start seeing consistent monthly and then weekly sales. But that's a whole nother conversation. So how much do inbound shipments cost? Well, you're not going to want to hear this word, but drum roll please. It depends. So what does it depend upon? It depends on where you live and where the warehouse is that you are sending your box or boxes. Now, of course, if they're being split up, then the cost is going to be different for each box if it's going to a different warehouse. The other thing to take into consideration is the total weight and size of the box. Both of those things matter. So if you have 10 items in a large box, it's going to cost more than if you have 10 items in a smaller box. So it has to do with dimensional weight. It has to do with the size of the box and how much weight they feel can fit into the box. So basically, you don't want to leave a lot of empty space in a box, which is why it makes more sense to cut it down if there's a lot of space left versus just packing it with packing material. The heavier, the better. You just want to fill up the box, basically. If everything is really light in the box, then it depends on the size of the things you're putting in there. If it's CDs, you're going to be able to fit a lot more in a box than books. If it's very light and there's not a lot of items in there, then my assumption is it's going to cost you more. I haven't done this, but if you're sending in other types of RA items that are big because they're in a box themselves, then if it's very light and there's not a lot of items in there, then my assumption is it's going to cost you more. I haven't done this, but if you're sending in other types of RA items that are big because they're in a box themselves, then you're probably going to pay a little bit more. But again, I could be wrong, so you'll probably let me know in the comments if I'm wrong. But regardless, let's talk about books specifically. So it depends on the size of the box and the weight. For me, for the past few months, I've been getting a lot of in-state shipments. Before that, I was getting a lot of out-of-state shipments. What I found is if I keep my shipments, individual shipments, to 49 items or less, and they are all books or all CDs or a mixture of books, CDs, and VHS tapes, that my shipment does not get split up. The second I put in 50 items, 50 exactly, then it gets split 2 ways. So I just keep it to 49 every time, and once I hit 49, even if I have more items, I stop, finish that shipment, and then I'll start a new one. So that's one thing. Now, I know that doesn't happen for everybody because I've been reading the comments from people when I talk about this in other states, in other parts of the country, that even though they put in less than 49 and it's all books, it can be split up between 2 or 3 warehouses. There are a lot of people that, and I heard this from others, that if they have 49 or less items, that they usually go to one warehouse. Not always in state. I'm fortunate to stay in state, but that they do go to one warehouse, which is much better than having the shipments split. It's a little bit cheaper. So with all of that being said, I'm going to give you 2 examples of how much inbound shipment will cost if it's in state and then across the country. 2 extremes. Recently, I sent a shipment in state of 1 box, 49 items, and it was heavier than most of my shipments of 49 items because it was mostly books and there were some heavy ones. It was 43 pounds. So I've gone all the way up to like 48-ish pounds, something like that. So it was 43 pounds and 49 items, 1 box in state. And that cost $8.18. So extremely cheap. How much is that per item? Which is what you should know. That breaks down to 16 cents per item. It's not really fair or equal because even if it's all books, there's going to be books that are heavier and larger than other ones that are smaller and lighter. But regardless, 16 cents per item. You can keep track of your expenses and know how much you spent on those books when they do sell. You can say, well, on average, what am I spending? Because I know looking back over the past few months of shipments that have been in state, I'm spending right around 16 to 18 cents per item. So that I know that when books are selling, that I only spend about 16 cents to ship that in, and I can take that into consideration in addition to sourcing cost. So that's another sub conversation or topic about this overall inbound shipping topic. But I would mention that. So about 16 cents. So that's the extreme low end. So if you are doing a shipment and you get in state, then it's going to be pretty inexpensive. UPS ground shipping with a deep discount through Amazon is really inexpensive. So 49 items, 16 cents an item is ridiculously low. On the other extreme, before I started doing smaller shipments and I was sending in 100 or more and they would get split and they would always go out of state, I sent a shipment back in March of 48 items in one box that weighed 48 pounds. So these were clearly heavy books. And it went, because I'm in California here on the West Coast, went from California all the way to Delaware. So basically as far as you can go, basically across the country, excluding maybe going all the way to the tip of Florida or the tip of Maine or something like that. But basically the furthest you can go. Coast to coast, let's just call it. And that shipment was $24.93, which is ridiculously low. And that breaks down to 52 cents an item. Now, these were all books. It was heavy. The difference between 16 cents an item and 52 cents an item is big. Even though 52 cents is not bad if you're selling for, I would say, at least 5 to 10 times what you bought your item for, what you sourced it for. If you buy it for $1, you send it in for 50 cents, and then it sells for $10 even, and you get paid about $4.50, let's say. So you make $3 off of $1. You make 4.5 times. But after you subtract everything, you end up with 3 times your money. As a low example here of a $9.95 book, $10 book. Hopefully you're sending in more that are going for more money. But those are 2 extreme examples of really inexpensive inbound shipping and really more expensive, basically. If you're having to send it to the other coast all the time, it still makes sense as long as your sourcing costs are low and you're selling for good profit. You're selling for at least $10 or higher, hopefully $15, $20 or more for books. So hopefully that helps you out. I always wondered what the cost was. I recommend doing smaller shipments and finding the sweet spot of where maybe it's not 49 items, maybe it's 30 items, maybe it's 29. Add 10 items to a shipment and then go all the way to the end of the shipping process to see where it's going. It's going to one warehouse, then add, let's say 5 more and take a look again. And if it's still going to one warehouse, add 5 more. You get my point. And then until you hit the point of it's making a split. And once you find that split, then take out that one item and go back and see where it sends you. It's tedious, but it's worth it so you can figure out, based on where you live, where the other warehouses are, etc., mostly probably where you live, you can find out where the maximum number of items is that you can put into one shipment of a certain type, probably should be just books or just media, to where they split it. Because there's got to be a spot, there's got to be a number, and that I would imagine that you can find if you go through that tedious process. But once you find it, let's say it's 29 items, and once you hit 30, they split the shipment 2 or 3 ways. Well, then stick to 29 items, even if you have 100, and then do those smaller shipments so it goes to one warehouse. Unless you don't mind paying a little bit extra and having different size boxes. That's something I used to do, but now I like to just use the one Lowe's box, assuming that I have 49 items and they're mostly books. They'll usually all or mostly fit with a little bit of space left in the box. So on the extreme end, if you're doing books and you're doing the smaller shipments, about 50 books, 50 cents coast to coast, but more like 16 cents if it's staying in state. So that's not bad, from let's say $8 to $25 for one shipment of 50 books. So hopefully that helps out. Let me know below in the comments what your experiences are and what your inbound costs are, because that is something definitely important to consider, because aside from sourcing, inbound cost, shipping costs are going to be your biggest expenses when you first start. Once you start making money, then you're not going to worry about it too much. But in the beginning, you need to know.
As always, remember, keep booking!
Cora, and I'm 5 years old, and I'm not rich.
You're not